everyone. I'm Dr. Vratulis, Interim Dean in the College of Education.
How you doing? I'm Darren Flowers, Saginaw Valley grad, teacher at University of Detroit Jesuit.
And I'm Beth Darling, proud SVSU alumna, class of May 15, and I'm a teacher in Chippewa Valley Schools within Metro Detroit.
And my name is Blayache Burnside. I teach in Lincoln Park Public Schools, kind of in the same area, I think, as you guys. Music teacher, K-5.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. So how are you being impacted by COVID-19, both professionally and personally?
Luckily, I haven't been impacted much personally. My friends and family have all been healthy, thankfully. But, I do recognize that other people haven't been as lucky, and I do empathize with those. And, some of our students and families and some of my coworkers have definitely had people sick in their families. So I do feel for those. But professionally, I've definitely been impacted. As a special teacher, I am the only music teacher in both my buildings. I can't, walk across the hall and ask somebody for help with my content during a regular school day. So this has been great to be able to work, collaboratively from home, with my K-12 music teachers in my district. So I've been really happy, to have the opportunity, even though it is a crisis at this time.
So personally, I have been affected. I had a cousin who had contracted COVID-19. So he was in the hospital for about a month. He was actually able to fight it and get off the ventilator, and he was just released last Saturday. But even then, it was like, you're happy, but I still can't go and see him, right? We kind of did a little family parade down the street, honking horns and stuff like that. Another way I was affected, some of you may have seen the news story about the young girl, Skylar, 5-year-old who passed. I knew Skylar and her family very well as too. Professionally, I'll say the biggest effect professionally it's having on me right now is just not being able to hang out with my students, not being able to have that daily interaction. I've slowly learned throughout this process that I guess they give me a sense of energy that I didn't realize when you go into work every day that they give you, so I'm kind of missing that energy right now. But other than that, there's been an adjustment, to curriculum and, putting my lesson plans online and doing online quizzes and things like that. But I think one of the larger adjustments for me is just not getting to be around my students anymore. I coach 2 sports as well. One of the sports I coach is track. This year, our track team was looking really good, and obviously there's no track this year. So that's another thing that we're all kind of, grinding our teeth about that we're missing out on. But, still making it the best way we can.
You certainly sound like you have fantastic relationships with those kids. So that makes my heart really happy to hear.
Yeah, that's right.
Beth.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy transition, this entire experience. Personally, I definitely have, just like you, Blake, I'm very lucky to have a family that I've been able to go home to and spend time with. We've been able to collaboratively take care of groceries and the needs like that. I'm not so much depending or being independent upon myself. So that's a huge relief for me. But I'm really missing my friends. And I have used FaceTime more during these last few weeks than the entire time I've had an iPhone. And as we're Zooming here, I've been doing, trivia nights with my friends and trying to do just like the house party app and playing games with it. But I am such a person that relies on that friend time and that camaraderie. So personally, I'm definitely missing that aspect of it. And I just am eager for my first few hangouts again. But professionally, I agree with both of you. Missing my time with my students has been something I wouldn't have expected to impact me this much. We talk so much about building relationships with the students, but you really don't realize it's like the saying of you never know what you have until it's gone, which is so cheesy to say. But it's just like with middle school, I teach 6th and 7th grade. There's like those couple minutes between the bell when you're really just hanging out with the kids, scrambling to get ready for the lesson. But the rest of the time you're just hanging out. And it's just those little moments of I'm a real person and you're a real person. So let's just enjoy each other's, time together that I'm really missing overall. And thankfully I do teach math. So I have great math teachers across the district that I can communicate with and collaborate. I actually just got off a math call. That's why I was a little late here. But and so thankfully with the math, times together, we're able to check in with each other first, make sure that everyone's okay, but then also just kind of make sure we're all doing all right with, the actual educating part of the job that comes with it.
So true that those relationships are so critical with friends and family and students, and you don't realize it until you have to make such a concentrated effort to organize that time with them. Most certainly. So what role has your SVSU degree played in managing the COVID-19 crisis?
So I really do think SVSU prepared me so much for working collaboratively with others. The way that the College of Ed was when I was in, the 2013, 14, 15 years, when we were working together in our cohorts, they really did a nice job of scaffolding our field experiences. So being able to work in small groups with other people, I haven't done as much in the last few years because it's just been me with my students all day. You get one PLC meeting a month, it seems like, but now it's like almost every other day I'm texting someone or calling someone. So having those small group interactions with my colleagues then, I think is really helping me to maintain that professionalism even from home in a virtual call now. But also just being able to learn the different techniques from all the different professors. Everybody has their own little personality up there. I say up there because I'm from Metro Detroit, but everyone has their own little personality. And so it's like you can take the idea that nobody, you can't learn how to make a relationship with a kid. You can have suggestions and you can have activities that overall go well, but it's really dependent on you and how you connect with each one of them, in the same way that I connected differently with each one of my professors.
I'd have to agree. The collaboration piece. Sometimes when you're teaching, you get caught into your lesson that you're kind of like on this island and you're used to being in your room and doing things your way and having your rules. But while I was attending Saginaw Valley, when I first started in a teacher's program, you meet people and then you move to the next class together, then the next class together. And so as you walk into, your third education course, you kind of see your crew and you're like, all right, well, I know they're good at this or she's good at that. So we're going to work together on this project. So throughout the program, you already start to develop these team building skills that are not necessarily part of the curriculum of the program. Right. But when you get out into the workplace, you're like, oh, well, I already know how to work with people. I've already done this. I have these skills that weren't necessarily a skill that we're graded on while we're there, but it's the skill that you develop and you master. And now you're able to really use that. It's one thing to be good at the curriculum, but, like Beth said, now we're in a position where I can't just be good at curriculum. If I'm not good at Zoom, I need to find someone who's good at Zoom. Or if I don't know how to use Blackboard, I need to collaborate with another teacher and get taught, how to better use Blackboard.
I'll chime in a little bit there. As a music ed major, we didn't take a lot of the classes alongside you guys as maybe secondary or elementary majors, but SVSU music students do take music technology classes. And I checked the course catalog, and the classes that helped me the most manage this crisis are still offered and required actually in the undergraduate catalog for 2020 and 2021, which is great because that's really where I learned about how to operate, certain professional music softwares, iPad integrations. And, even though it was just a small taste and technology is always changing, it really did give me, a leg up in this crisis for sure. And the other course that I wanted to mention was called Foundations of Music in my time, but I think it now has a different name. But it's basically, where we learned about the vast history of music education. And, music education hasn't always been the same function. It always kind of changes and revolves to, what society needs at that point. And right now we can't gather to rehearse music. We can't gather to perform concerts. So us music educators, are trying to adapt, and I learned in this course at Saginaw Valley, and maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but, music ed has adapted to these catastrophes in the past, and we will adapt in the future, and it's not going to be the end of music education. I will mention they have a huge Mac lab. It has like 20 iMacs at Saginaw Valley. So, you don't have to share that computer when you're in that class. Some universities don't have access, to this, like they have a smart board in like in that lab, and so I had used a smartboard before I stepped into my classroom, but I know some of my colleagues who never had experience with smartboards, for example, so definitely SVSU has some of the greatest technology that I've seen, for sure.
What was your favorite thing that you used that was tech forward?
Sure. Well, I didn't really learn about this per se. I just learned about how to create a virtual classroom using Google Slides, where you publish it as a web page so the changes you make are live. But I will say that I learned that having a web presence is extremely important as a teacher sometimes, especially with music ed, because you have such a visual program. And I did learn that, at Saginaw Valley, that importance.
Fabulous. What role have you played or do you anticipate playing in the recovery from COVID-19? And then in addition to that, or to complement it, how did your SVSU degree contribute to that role?
Currently my operating status has been like research mode, I guess. I've been watching webinars, trying to keep up with how other countries are on the other side of this pandemic, sort of, in other ways. Like here in Michigan, when we learned that in-person classes were suspended, China had been doing, online remote learning for weeks. So I really, looked towards those teachers in other countries. And, we're all teachers, we're all working together. And some people might think of teaching, or especially with music education, as competitive. But I think at Saginaw Valley, we learned to work as that group, kind of like what we already mentioned before, working collaboratively.
For me, I think one role that I'll be playing, or that I do play, I teach social studies. So I think this is a good time for a call to action. So I think the social studies teacher in me, something that I got from Dr. Hinton in sociology was, it's one thing to identify a problem, but what are we going to do about the problem? So a part of what I want to present is just, okay, how do we move forward and help solve in the event that this ever happens again? What can we do as individuals to help out our fellow man and fellow woman? And again, I got that straight out of Dr. Hinton's class. It was one thing to study this data and these charts, and then she's like, okay, so you got the data, so what are you going to do with it? And I think that's where a lot of us tend to drop the ball. We'll see a stat or we'll hear a number and we're like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then we move on with our lives. As far as within my building, I really want to bring a sense of normalcy back to the students, just from talking to some of my players and talking to some of the kids in clubs that I moderate. They're just so out of their norm right now that I really just want to be able to be a presence in the building to make them feel like, okay, things are cool. It's all right. Whether we go back with a social distance rule or not, or whatever the government may, mandate or may not mandate, I want to make sure that I'm there to provide just a sense of normalcy and make them feel like it's all right. We'll get through this. We got through it, and let's continue to learn and grow together.
Well, I will say just very quickly before we have our last, that I think whenever there's a pandemic or where there's a crisis, it's so important to have leaders in the community who are really responding to action items. And I think we're so fortunate to have SVSU students such as all three of you, and I'm sure so many of our students who are out there who are really stepping up and being leaders and helping just pave the pathway. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
If I could add a little bit to that, Dr. Haskett, I mentioned his name. He really conveyed the importance of being part of these associations, like national associations. I started my time as a collegiate member with the National Association for Music Educators at SVSU. And like you said, Darren, it's just so important to stay informed on everything going on. So I really do agree with how you said that.
So to wrap it up here, I would say, as we transition back to the classroom, or, in the fall, or with whatever the new group of kids you get as your new class in the fall, the biggest things to keep in mind, in my opinion, are just being a leader for them and being as calm as you can and being as informed as we can, but being that leader for the kids as well as our colleagues, working together and having that, kind of reliance on each other and being able to work together. The flexibility of understanding that just like it's been the last few weeks, every day could be different. And, the expectations of today could be different than the expectations of yesterday. And that can be really hard to take and change and adapt to. But that's part of being a teacher, is being able to jump through hoops and make it happen however it is. And then the last thing is just being compassionate, but just being able to know that we're going to have kids come to us in the next few months that did not have this experience, and just being compassionate for them and knowing that, I can be here for you, even though we didn't have the same experiences. I can still empathize for you. And so SVSU really prepared me for that through all of the programs and organizations I was a part of. Many of them, I don't know if I can mention them by name, but many of the groups, gave me leadership opportunities to prepare for situations, not like this, nobody expected this, but to still be able to inform and kind of take on that leadership role. And then just, by being in several organizations, you had to be flexible and have that time management and just kind of sure, go along with it. I think of improv, like, yes, and what next? And then just, we're in teaching because we're compassionate people. You cannot do this job without having that heart and that want and that desire to nurture and take care of kids that aren't your own kids, but they're your kids, so.
So do you have any just final messages for students who are students at SVSU? What is there, like a lasting, is there a thought, a message, something you'd want to share with them?
Biggest thing I would say is embrace the experience, embrace being there, get involved, get to know your professors, join some clubs, because while, sometimes we get caught in the whole, I got to get this work done, I got to study, I have to do this, it's kind of like stop and smell the roses, embrace the experience. And through embracing that experience, you'll develop some of these skills that we've already mentioned with answering the questions. You'll learn how to work in groups, you'll gain experience in other areas, you'll gain leadership opportunities. So if I could say anything, like embrace being up there, embrace the atmosphere, embrace the professors, embrace the classes, and the light at the end of the tunnel is there. And as long as you're embracing that experience and having a good time getting through the tunnel, you'll get to that light much faster.
I'm a relatively new teacher. I'm only going into my third year, but I graduated high school in 2011, which was only for a few short years after, what we now call the Great Recession. I remember going to a school board meeting in a marching band uniform to fight for elementary music. And here I am. Wow. Teaching elementary music. If this is what you want to do, we need great teachers. We need people to be advocates. Being as a special teacher, I knew I wanted to advocate for music ed, but just even education in general, we're always going to need great teachers even after the crisis. So I would just say, keep going.
And to wrap it up, I would say, going back to my point earlier, of I'm such a connections person and really rely on my friends and our times together. So, whether you're in clubs or organizations at Saginaw Valley, or if you're just really tight with some people in your cohort or some of your gen ed classes, maintain those relationships right now. I am very happy to say that I'm still almost daily in touch with members from Forever Red, the student alumni group, and some of my coworkers from Campus Rec have reached out to me. And so it's, I mentioned I graduated in 2015, but still years later, we're checking in on each other and making sure that, even though we're outside of the education world, they're doing other careers, we still have that care and concern for each other, just because of the experiences that we got to have at Saginaw Valley. And then in terms of being a teacher, it's going to be okay.
Well, I'm just going to say again, I can't thank you enough for all of you to take the time to come and to share such inspiring stories. It makes me very, very proud. I'm so proud of this college. I'm proud of all of your resilience and leadership. And I'm sure this is going to be of great value to all of our students who watch it. So thank you. I appreciate it.